Hello, everyone. I just want to welcome you today to our drop-in discussion within the European Leadership Learning Community. Today, we're going to be looking at the whole aspect of vision and vision casting. I will be your host today, hosting with you today. And with me are three wonderful people who will be with me in the drop-in discussion. My name is Francis Obaika. And I hope that as we listen, we hear, we share, that the Lord will really bless us and we shall really receive from this and be able to take some things that we're able to apply as we proceed. So without any further ado, I will want us to just introduce ourselves. I will start with Anya this afternoon as we continue.
Hi, well, my name is Anya Schlegel. I am from Kyiv, Ukraine, and I've been ministering with YWAM Kyiv for 22 official years. And for the past 11 years, me and my husband have been leading the base. And what I want to tell about myself, I was thinking there are so many things to say, but I got saved through a wonderful ministry of youth with a mission, King's Kids. And as a teenager, I did not grow up in a Christian family, so I am forever grateful to missionaries that came into my country, came into my school, were bold to do evangelism for all of us, and about 10 of us out of 150 got saved that day. And I love King's Kids ministry. Seriously, if you're not doing it on your basis, do it. It's an amazing ministry. And so from the very beginning, what that ministry is known for is empowering young people, and young, not just after high school, young in middle school, through high school and after. And they did. They really invested and installed in me that desire to lead in what God wants to do in this world, take that courageous stand, bold stands, and say, let your kingdom come and let me be part of it. So that's me. I am married, have 3 kids right now, and working in YWAM Kyiv.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessie Pfarrkircher. I'm American, but married to a German who happens to be the base leader here in Berlin. I've been here for about 11 years now. My husband helped pioneer the base here in Berlin. Toby is his name. We have 3 kids as well, and it's a joy to watch them grow up. I originally joined YWAM, this will be 15 years ago this year. As a dancer. So I joined a performing arts CTS, and after touring around, that's when I met my husband. But now God has Bible translation on my heart, and that's actually what I studied. I have a BA in that, and I did a master's course for applied linguistics for Bible translation, and that is my passion that I'm pursuing now with the End Bible Poverty movement. And we, at our base, we have several Bibles in several languages that we have people that just go out and distribute them. We have Bible training here, and we want to get the translation here as well. So we've seen the power of the word in people's mother heart, their heart language. And it's just amazing to see the transformation that comes when people know that God speaks their language. So that's a passion on my heart. And I have actually a heart for the deaf as well. So signed languages, Bible translation is what I'm pursuing. So yeah, we have many interests here, and in a big city, there are lots of needs. So we are prayerfully just moving into what God has for us in this season.
Thank you very much, Jess.
Hi, I'm Stu Matheson. I work at YWAM Harpenden in the UK. I've primarily been involved in kind of an offshoot ministry of King's Kids called Mission Adventures, which is similar. And actually, I have a similar story to Anya as well, in terms of like having experiences of missions when I was a teenager, and that completely changing the trajectory of my life. And now I get the joy and privilege of working with youth missions within YWAM. I serve as part of the European and international eldership for the Mission Adventures ministry. And it's just so much fun to continue kind of sowing into the next generation in a similar way to how being part of youth missions changed my life. My hope and desire is to see that in so many others as well. Yeah, I'm the young one. I've only been in YWAM for 6 years on staff, so nowhere near the experiences of you guys. But it's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much Stuart. Thank you for being part of this discussion today. And as you can see, one of the things we're talking about is vision. I mean, just listening to your stories, Anya, Jesse, and Stu, how you came into Wyoming, your salvation, Anya, you being in Ukraine, in Kiev, and you leading the base there with your husband. Now, when we think about vision in Wyoming, I think that's what really drives us, because where there's no vision, the people perish. And because Wyoming is youth with a mission, and young people actually, if there's no vision, they're not going to follow you. So I just want to start with Stuart. I want to ask you this question. When you think about the word vision, what's your take in there, the vision itself that really moves us? What would be your take in there?
I think when I think of vision, the question that always comes to my mind is, wouldn't it be cool if? It's similar to what Carl had written in his article about, the what if question. But my question I always ask myself or ask others is, wouldn't it be cool if, or what would be the coolest thing? And that's really kind of the motivating question for me, and what I hope for other people is in terms of where they're putting their time, effort, and energy. Wouldn't it be cool if something that isn't yet came to be? What's the dream there? So yeah, what would be the coolest thing is my understanding of vision. And sometimes maybe the coolest thing isn't the word of the Lord, which I'm sure we'll get into, but it's a good starting place in terms of inspiring people for being visionary, and inspiring people for a vision and getting on board with it and owning it. In painting that picture, like Carl was talking about, of what the future could look like, and then calling it into the now.
It was wonderful. Anya, what can you elaborate more on from your perspective?
For me, vision, I mean, literally, it's a picture, right? It's vision, so it's a picture. Yes, I totally agree with Stu. Is like, what could it be like? But I also always think about God as a problem solver. That's what vision for me is. There are so many problems in this world, and for each one of them, he has a solution. He has a desire and a great passion within him to bring the kingdom, which is the happiness, the beautiful picture of what if I was the king, what would I do, right? So that's the kingdom, and for me, that passion and thriving desire of God to solve the problems of this world. And so for each one of them, for each country, for each place, for each person, for each generation, for each area of society, he has a plan, he has a solution. So it is up to us to find what it is, and then to decide, do I participate at this time, or do we participate? Yes. So that's the vision for me, is a problem-solving, thriving character of God to bring that kingdom.
Well, it's interesting you ended with the word kingdom. It's really interesting that it's not just a thing, it's bringing his kingdom in the midst of the vision. Is manifesting that kingdom on earth that we find ourselves, that he's placed us here to bring his kingdom here. Jess, what would be your take to that vision?
Yeah, usually my husband is the vision caster and I am the problem solver, so we work well together in that. But I just see the creativity of God in that as well. I just see how, I mean, look at the many billions of people he created, how we are each different, and even solving problems, we come to sometimes the same problems over and over again. Even with vision, how can we make that reality? That's how I think. Like, my husband has the big picture and I'd be like, hey, how can we make that reality? And I see a lot of roadblocks, but God is always creative in removing those in ways that we don't even think of. So Yeah, I think also with vision, it just gives hope. Like there's something that is attainable. There's something that maybe somebody hadn't even thought of. And even what Josiah said in his article was like, okay, if you can't describe it, like, what does it smell like? What does it taste like? Use your other senses to try to get a hold of it. And that just brings up a lot of new ways of thinking outside of the box. And so it's a kingdom culture. It's bringing what Jesus has for us here on earth, and that we can live that today. And it's inspiring for me.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, if you, Lausanne said something. She said that the whole vision casting also needs what's the word of the Lord. I think one of the things within YWAM is that we have the word of the Lord and then we do. And at the same time, one of the challenges is how do you communicate this word of the Lord to the younger generation, or, as a leader, how do you get these ones, the younger ones, or your staff or the people you're leading to buy into the vision? And also not just to buy into it, but to run with the vision. Not just to run with the vision, but also to understand the vision, that they're willing to run with it, to apply it, and to see that vision come to pass. Stu, you said something. You said sometimes the vision needs to be painted. It's not there yet. But how do you get people to begin to see it, smell it? Just said it. How did they smell it? They taste it. Josiah said he used that illustration. How do you taste the vision? Previously he said, do you see the vision? I'm like, taste vision? You need to taste it. How does it taste? Now, what do you think? What's your take when it comes to the aspect of how do you cast the vision as a leader to the ones who are with you to run with it? Anyone?
Yeah, if I can, I have a thing of what not to do, and I had a great experience at that. But I remember when we just became leaders of YWAM Kyiv. Now, we were not pioneering base. We came in, there were 4 leaders before us, but we really felt that it was time to refresh with God, refresh the vision. So we took a whole leadership team for 5 days seeking the face of God, and we did meet with him. We got the vision, the values, everything set in. We come to our staff very pumped up, and we're like, and I'm pretty okay speaker. So I'm like casting the vision, I'm talking about it. I'm so excited about it. And then one of our staff goes like, well, I just feel like you chewed up my food, stuck it down my throat, and now you're asking me just to swallow it. And you could just see the whole of that went, and it was really bad. It was really terrible. I felt so, I felt a loss of just not being able to, after meeting with God and after having catch the heart of God, all of a sudden we didn't catch his, is it my connection not stable? I'm very sorry.
It's okay.
So then not being able to connect with our staff and to bring his heart in a different way that would include them into really hearing his voice and hearing his heart. So that was number 1 lesson for me in failure, that you have to include your staff in participating, listening to God, and participating, hearing it together with you. That's a number 1 principle.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the beautiful things about YWAM is that everyone plays, right? We trust that God is going to speak to us collectively through anyone and everyone. And I think, if we go back to ownership, us participating and hearing the word of the Lord together with our teams, rather than as a leader, I'm saying this is what the word of the Lord is. We're going to discern the word of the Lord together, and I may bring a piece and you may bring a piece, and then somebody else brings a piece, and it forms a collective understanding of what the word of the Lord is. And when that's come from a collective place within the team, then there's greater ownership of what that is, and a greater desire to implement and see that come to be, because they were there when we collectively heard from the Lord together. Yeah, I agree. It's foundational in seeing things, a vision sustained and fulfilled, is that initial piece of we all heard from the Lord together.
Although I do think that we all heard from the Lord together is not an easy thing to accomplish, because we also had many times when we tried to do it together and it went in so many different directions that we're like, I'm standing there thinking, God, how do I bring it all together? I don't want to exclude anyone or say like, well, you heard from the Lord and you did not hear from the Lord. So that as well has been an adventure to how do you then bring it together? How do you hear God together corporately is a whole entire art of things to accomplish. And every time we come to it, I fast and pray for the Lord's grace to fall upon us and to be able to understand how to facilitate that process is not an easy thing.
Yeah, it's just what do you think?
I was just going to add that I didn't realize the amount of time it takes to communicate it, that to get everybody on board, and sometimes repeating it, and you can't just say it once, but like, and if there's new people, then including them in it as well. So it's a more time consuming activity sometimes than we initially think, but even just to get the vision, like you said, Anya, is a process to get there, but also to get everybody on board, there needs to be, everybody needs to understand the vision, or where you're going to try to get to the vision. And initially I didn't realize that, but that it's a time consuming process, but it's much better when everybody's on board and taking ownership and seeking the Lord together for that.
It's really interesting, Jesse. You said of the whole aspect of communication. And when it comes to, and Andrea said something, he said, one of the biggest things we need to do is care for the ones you have right now. Like care for the people you have right now. And at the same time, when new people come in, there needs to be this part where you're communicating the vision. But as you're communicating the vision, you also need to spend time with them. Because people will always stay in a place where they feel accepted, wanted, and understood. But that also has its advantages and disadvantages. But how do leaders, as leaders, how would you say is best to communicate a vision to be able to have the ones who are leading run with it, and also create an understanding of giving them a place to understand what the vision is? I give an example, because sometimes we can communicate a vision, but the person we're communicating the vision to does not buy into the vision. So what do you do with that person? Do you throw them away and say, I don't really like you, so let's put you aside? Or do we find something for them to do? They're part of the body. The question is, how do we accommodate those people? Or how do we communicate the vision for them to understand it?
One thing we do here for new staff that is coming in is we do have a lunch in with the leadership team where we talk about our vision and we talk about our values, and that's when you talked about how do you communicate the vision to new staff. That was our choice. This is what we do, so we don't have to constantly repeating it every time a new person comes into the rest of the body. But we also emphasize a value of working in teams. So if one person comes in and he has a vision that is not being done within YWAM Kyiv body, he can't just go ahead and do it because he does not yet have a team. He doesn't have a circle of people around him that he will not be alone in all of this. So for us, we found that safety structure to say like, hey, if you want to do vision, we're not saying no, we're just saying build up a team And maybe, we'll also pray into it. We're not closing doors for new visions at all. We're just saying, hey, let's work in teams, let's work in circles, let's work in, so you are not there alone dying on front lines of this new vision. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it's helpful. It's helpful. Stu, what are your thoughts?
I think the approach is going to be different depending on what we're talking about. So, certain bases, for example, may have a particular focus or a vision that they collectively hold together. And then there's ministry initiatives. So, if somebody's saying, oh, I don't really feel like I'm part of this, can get on board with this vision for ending Bible poverty, because my passion is over here in youth ministry or something along those lines, where there's just a difference in interest rather than it being foundational to the community. I think that your approach is going to be different. There's probably room for saying, okay, well, maybe we do move you over here, and there is room for you to have preference and some form of decision of where you're spending your time and energy and effort. But I think that sometimes there comes a point where, we're saying collectively, we're as a community going over here. And if you're not going there with us, then, maybe there's another YWAM community for you that is going where you want to be going. And you'll find, a greater affinity with people somewhere else. And maybe there comes a point where that is an appropriate conversation to have. It's probably one we don't like to have necessarily, but I think your approach to that is going to be different depending on how significant that vision casting piece is to the corporate identity of your community.
Yeah, I just want to add with that, because I think you're so right, Stu, because you need to be clear whether there is future at all for that vision and that ministry or not. Because if there is future, like, for example, you build a team, you can do it, then yes. But if there is no future for that ministry, then I think it's very integrity for us to say, hey, listen, you have a great vision or not, whatever you think about it, but we don't have room, even in the future, for this ministry within our community. And maybe you need to make a different choice.
That's a very, Anya, what you just said, it's a very, most people don't want to do that. Because, for example, if you have, I think Andreas wrote about it and said, when people come to your ministry and they want to work with you, we have a tendency of saying everyone can come. And we say yes to everyone. But he was asking the question, do we have to say yes to everyone just because we want to recruit them? Or are we looking to find out if they really fit for themselves? That's number one. It's not looking at the ministry or the base, but it's seeing the individual. How can we add value to your life? Is this the place you're meant to be right now? And can we also cater to you? Because I think sometimes we recruit people, and then when they're recruited, we forget them. Because we're so busy, and some leaders don't really, and the person is really suffering, they're not growing. So I think what you just brought up, Anya, is really key to be able to say, okay, the ministry or the vision you are casting here, this community loves you for who you are, but we don't have the infrastructure or the things that will facilitate and allow this ministry grow. Now, the question there is, some people will say, you have to create something with YWAM, you have to do something for them. Now, what would be the best way to communicate it to them or encourage them to seek out other places that will be of great help for them to achieve their vision or to be able to move forward and progress in the areas they need to do? What would be the best way to present it to them?
Well, one thing that we tried in the past is to have a trial period for people that we've prayed about and we have a lot of people that want to come to Berlin and have lots of ideas, and there's a lot of need in the city. But making a team is really challenging. There's a spirit of isolation around the city too, so we have to fight that a lot, spiritual warfare. So people have these great ideas and want to go out, but they don't have a team around them, and then they burn out and fall apart. But there's some people that we've called that have come in and we're like, okay, we're not quite sure if this is the right fit, but there was enough there to give them a chance. So we gave them a 3-month trial period, and we could see if that worked or not. And some of them, it was really just what they needed. They got a taste of it. They're like, oh, this is actually not what I want to do in this place. And then that was enough for them themselves to decide to move on. So that was helpful, and that we wanted to show them, Carefree, we want to give you a chance. We don't exactly have space for this at this moment, but sometimes they needed to figure it out themselves. But we also want to be open to, okay, is God leading us in that direction in this season or for the future? So it's a tough balance, because we want to be open to what God is doing and to what people are doing. But we've in the past made the mistake of just taking everybody, and it's been really hard to minister to these people that have so many needs, and it's taking a lot of energy from the staff to try to walk with them when things just aren't working out. So we've had to discern a lot of that through prayer, and just really be like, well, maybe this isn't the season, or we can do a trial period, but then we would all need to evaluate and see from that. So, but each case is different, so it's really hard to know right off the bat. It's not a one size fits all thing.
Yeah, I think it's very loving to be able to tell. I think one of the things in YWAM is the word no seems to be negative, but actually I think the word no is actually positive. When we look at the whole aspect of Jesus and his disciples, I mean, who would not want to be Jesus' disciple? But only 12 made it in. And those 12, he selected them. And when he selected them, he gave them a vision, actually. He called them with a purpose. He said, follow me. And I can imagine Peter, he said, okay, I should follow you, but why should I follow you? And then he now said, I will make you fishers of men. And the vision was very clear. And he dropped, the scripture said he dropped everything. He even left his parents. I mean, he didn't even have time to pack his backpack if he had one then, but he dropped everything and then he followed him. I just want us to look at the whole aspect of recruiting when it comes to vision. The thing is, Andreas said something. He said, when we recruit people, we also have to think, do we have the necessary not infrastructure, but do we have the stability to be able to see the best out of them come out? And then he talked about those who leave. Like, when people who leave, are they leaving? Do we celebrate them as they're leaving? Do we help them in the process of their departure? So we recruited them, but now it's time for them to leave, because the story when they leave is of great value for those who are still in. So here comes the question: as leaders, as we in the round table, what do you think is very important when it comes to recruiting, vision casting and recruiting people, or sharing the vision with people to be able to stay along with us in the long haul to see this vision come to pass?
Well, I'll tell you, I am a guilty person of not being able to say no. It's definitely my team around me that is reminding me of that option often. But I am guilty of seeing a person with even a minor desire for missions, and I want to say, yes, please, let's try it. At least try it. Mm-hmm. Now, we do have a 6-month evaluation for every new staff, and like not only new staff, but let's talk about where is your life, right? And but as far as recruiting, we go and we talk and we encourage and we say, even if you fail in missions, we will help you walk through the fail. As bad as it might sound, but I don't treat the decision of joining missions as that's it, like, how do I want to say it in a way that you would understand me? I don't treat it as like this life-setting decision that is irrevocable, and it's not like getting married. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not like giving birth to a child. It has, yes, it is your career. Yes, it's what you're choosing to do in life, but you can try and do it for 1 year, and you might succeed, and you might love it, and you might commit the rest of your life to it. Or you might say, you know what, during this year, I understood that I want to be a doctor. And you're so right, Francis, that as YWAM body, like, our job is to say, you know what, that is so great. Let us bless you. Let us send you off and to be a photographer, or to be a doctor, to be a teacher. And that's a harder thing to do, just to recognize that God is leading them a different path. And as you said, to set that example of it's okay for you to leave and go into the spheres, right? Because that's our desire, and be successful there. Yeah, so that's my thoughts.
Stuart, what do you think?
I think sometimes as YWAM, we can recruit people that maybe we shouldn't, maybe sometimes more often than not. There's the two-way street. If we've got people saying, hey, I would want to come and do this, maybe we are quick to say, that sounds fantastic, come and try it. But then if we took a step back and said, okay, do we actually have the resources? Do we have other staff that are going to want to come alongside and form a team around this vision or idea? Maybe the answer is no. And I think we need to be quite intentional when we're recruiting staff about what is it that they're really coming to do. I know I can speak from our experience here, the YWAM Harvenden, that I've seen sometimes our staff get lost in, maybe they don't have a specific direction. It's just a desire to come and serve YWAM Harvenden, and we say, fantastic, come and join us. We need people to make our beds and cook food and whatever else. But then they get stuck in these roles that perhaps are less life-giving for some. Maybe the odd person in between is going to really find it life-giving to be hospitable and make beds, but for most of our staff, that's not where they find their joy. And sometimes maybe we recruit staff without a clear direction from them in terms of where they're going to fit into our community and where they're going to spend their time and what's going to be life-giving for them. And we think of it more in terms of how can they serve us rather than how can we serve them as well. And there needs to be a both and, right? Beds need to get made, food needs to get cooked. But finding that balance when we're recruiting staff and being really upfront in expectations on both sides of what's going to be life-giving, while also ensuring that the things get done that need to get done, and that there doesn't become this, particularly for, I think of some of our younger staff, maybe they've just finished DTS, they don't really know where they're going. Maybe there's a easiness for us to just put them to work and they say yes to everything because they're new and want to serve. But then, 2 years later, when their 2-year commitment is up, they look back and think, oh, well, how productive was I for the kingdom? Maybe not as much as if we've been more intentional right at the beginning in developing our staff. So I think when we're looking at recruitment, we also need to bring into the conversation, what does staff development look like? What does it mean for us to mentor and walk with our staff as they go, so that they're not just serving the base, but we are creating space to hear what is their dream, what is their vision for what they want to do. And maybe it's something already existing in the base and we need to plug them in with that in a more intentional way, or maybe it's something new that we can give time and space to. But recruitment and then staff development need to go hand in hand, because I think our staff are only going to have as meaningful of an experience and be fulfilling, and then want to continue as much as we invest in them.
Exactly. Jess, any thoughts?
I just know we've been through a couple different phases of from one pendulum of like accepting everybody, and then okay, what does that look like? And then we went to another side of, all right, we're just focusing on staff development, member care, everybody has one-on-ones, everybody has a small group. Okay, everybody is taken care of. And then that was also like, for some people, just like, so it's tough to find the balance, to find the tension. We're also a city base, so we have to really try to get the training in here, but ministry is all over the place. But through like DTSs and people, that's where a lot of people come and they get the DNA of the base, and then they're more likely to stay on. And so it's we get a lot of requests, but it's hard to like find the balance. We find there's so many different things pulling at different areas that we're still trying to find, how do we have a good balance of staff development, but and forming a team around people with these awesome vision and ideas and ministry ideas, and but also serving the base, so that everybody can get fed and have beds. So yeah, it's something that we just have to constantly fight for, actually, to make sure it happens, to make sure everybody's taken care of. And yeah, we haven't figured it out yet, but we're still praying into it and trying our best and trying new things. We're trying to be open to new ways too.
I mean, just like you said, open to new ways. I think the whole balance of how do I do this or this, the tension will always be there. And I think that's where we lean on to the aspect of like really praying about it as leaders and really giving some thought into it as we seek the face of the Lord. Because sometimes, and I think that's where wisdom comes in, where there's some people we feel we need to say no to, but when you really look at them and you see God gives you the eye to see what the potential they carry, the answer should be yes. But then the question comes, am I willing myself to invest in this person? Because it's like what Stu said, you have to be intentional. And you also have to make sure that the individual is being developed also at the same time. So it's not just bringing them in to cover areas that we need them to cover, that needs to be covered, but it's also seeing the individual. Their growth is very beneficial. It's very important that they grow. It's also important that we have them in mind. They are not in YWAM for like 3 years and they ask themselves, what have I done actually in these 3 years? Okay. So they have these questions. They feel as if they're not moving forward, they're being stuck. And I think that's where the whole aspect of not just staff development, but I think individuals development and the communication of the expectation needs to be very clear. Because I think when we're casting vision or recruiting, we need to, as leaders, we need to be clear what the expectation is. Because if we don't communicate expectation, the people will work with assumption. So I think it's both sides working with assumption. So just a question, how can we avoid that aspect of communicating clearly so that people don't work with assumptions as they come in or as we're sharing the vision with them? How can we communicate clearly expectations?
Well, I can share a little bit of our experience. Now, while in Kyiv, we own a property and we own 2 buildings, well, 4 buildings, whatever. We own property that does need practical caregiving and things like that. One of the big changes we made 5 years ago is that we switched from having full-time managing roles. So now we have every staff that is full-time in ministry or in training programs, and each one of us part-time in managing roles. So each, like, for example, as a base leader, I still do 1 hour of housekeeping a week for sure. And then I do about 3 hours of administrative roles. So then we don't, and then every staff is for us required to put in 3 hours out of the whole week into managing roles, which I'm going to get to your question, Francis,
okay.
Which allows us to to give the opportunity for each one of us to actually work with people and work with ministries and work with passions right away. So we wouldn't have to wait, because we just had a bad experience with people being in managing roles and completely dried out and just became a bit hard-hearted, and we tried to get them out of those roles, but then you can't find anyone who wants to be in those roles full time. So we decided, hey, let's try this. And it's been a challenge. I'm not saying it's a smooth ride, but we communicate clearly from the beginning to each of our staff that we sharing the load of practical work here in YWAM Kyiv. And we want each person to be able to participate in ministry, or whether it's a training program or, mercy ministry. Because of that, each one of us is required to do practical work during the week, whether you love it or not, whether, no one really loves to clean, but we all do. So in that case, that's our clear communication from the beginning. We say, because we care for everyone, then everyone participates, and you need to be willing, whether you are called to lead DTSs, you need to be willing to participate in practical work so all of us can do what we really love. So that's our communication.
I think that's very clear. I mean, it's very good and clear because it's a community and it takes all to keep it going. And at the same time, there are times where you specialize in what you're good at, and there are times where you come together to cover up areas. And I think the new ones, the recruited ones, will also see and not just learn from it, but also see, it's not something, there's no one special person here, but together we're serving one another. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask us another question. I think the whole aspect, Josiah said something. He talked about stepping out in taking risk. He also talked about being open to make mistakes. I think the whole aspect of mistakes, he talked about vision casting and vision itself, but he said we need to be willing to take risk and also be open to make mistakes. Now, what's your take in that area? What's your take? Anyone?
I would argue I'm the biggest failure of anyone I know. I have failed more things than anyone. And that's because I probably try a lot of things. But it makes me gracious, I think, to the failure of others, that I have failed so much, and it's the areas where I have grown the most, right? It's through those failures that have then it produced endurance, and it's produced a desire for learning more, or let's try something in a different way. So it's an incredible growth opportunity, and I want that for anyone who's involved in a team that I'm working with. I want them to feel the freedom to fail, but not only that it's okay for them to fail, but that we want to embrace failure, because then it will spur on something else, or it will cause growth in some way. Not that we're seeking failure. I don't know if that's necessarily the goal, but we want to embrace failure and expect it, and then be prepared for it. I think, of course, we are hoping for successful ministries and that everything is going to be great, but we want to create intentional space for people to fail. And not just that it's okay, but that we need to expect that it will happen, and then when it really comes to it, we are actually okay with that, and maybe we end up taking the blame or taking the ownership of people within our team that have failed. Right? I'll jump in and I'll cover them to make sure that maybe they don't receive the full brunt of the consequences of decisions that have been made or things like that, because we want to protect our staff in feeling free to take a risk again. We want to encourage risk taking as part of, I think, in some ways, part of our DNA is YWAM. We do new things in new ways. So we want to encourage that. And in order for you to create an environment where people do that, you also need to make it okay to fail.
Wonderful.
For myself,
what is,
as I got a, sorry, Francis, I interrupted you. Before I came to YWAM, I considered myself a perfectionist, and that was my biggest struggle. But that's been my biggest challenge in YWAM. I'm married to a pioneer, and so trying new things all the time and seeing what works and what doesn't has really taught me, like, yeah, like you said, Stuart, to be gracious, but also to be humble. And even I'm working in a language that is not my mother tongue. And so I've learned the language the hard way. And everybody that wants to come and learn German, I say, you have to try, you have to make mistakes, and you have to be okay with that, because that's the only way you're going to learn. And for me, that was like the biggest thing, because I want to do it right. And so I, just from my personal experience and just the way I'm made, I want to do a good job. I want to, like, at everything I try. I don't think I'm going to do a good job. It's hard for me to start it, but that's just been the overcoming that I've had to learn. And language learning has been a big part of that. So that's been just my lesson. And I'm constantly, like, that's how I learned German, is through taking on the accounting here at the base, and just interacting with my in-laws and everything, and making mistakes, telling people things, and they're suddenly laughing, and I'm like, oh, that's not what I meant to say, but like, it goes against everything that I am. But that's how I've grown too, is to just be willing to step out in that. So my husband has no problem with it, but I'm just like, Lord, give me the grace for that. But he's willing to try it, and he's just got a great attitude too. He has so much grace when people fail, or like and so I want to have more of that, to just be like, yep, okay, well, we're getting up together and we're going forward together, and we're just going to try again. So that's a very huge encouragement to me too. And that's what I want to, with our kids too, just encouraging that, hey, you fell, get up, let's try it again. You're going to do it one day. So let's keep going. We'll walk with you in that.
Anya?
I think in taking risks, it's very important to seize opportunities. You know, when you see an opportunity, I hate to say it, but tomorrow it might not be there. So if you won't develop that riskiness in you, you might lose a lot of things. Like for us, for example, in Ukraine has been quite lax with COVID restrictions. So we took an opportunity with that by taking risk, inviting lots of outreach teams to come to Ukraine and minister with us. And we have had waves of teams coming in and do their outreaches because we're so open. Was it risky? Absolutely. Did we have waves of sickness? Yes, we did. Praise God, no one had any heavy cases. We did take that risk, but at the same time, we took the opportunity of thriving in our ministries, and it was such a blessing for all of us to have the ministries blossoming with the help of many volunteers that came in to help.
I think the whole aspect of risk itself, I think taking risk is the mission that we are known. It's young people, and if you take risk out of young people, then we're no more. so I think it's really, and I think that's where the older generation comes in. You know, as much as there is risk taking in vision and recruiting, but also at the same time being willing to be open to make mistakes. I mean, if you never make mistakes, you never succeed, because we learn from our mistakes. And as we learn from those mistakes, the hope is that we grow in those mistakes. The intention is not for us to make those mistakes intentionally, but as those mistakes are made, we learn from it, and hopefully we can grow in those mistakes. Now, this will be a very personal question. I just want to ask, I wouldn't say personal, but your take on it, on a very personal question when it comes to the whole aspect as leaders or as a leader. Now, when it comes to the younger generation, for example, we're youth with a mission. And I used to say this, a base that does not recruit, you die. There's no revelation there. Because that's where we recruit people. Lauren said youth of a mission is like a wave. And there's a wave of young people coming, and and the young people understand the vision, they take it and they run with it, because they are the future of tomorrow. And we kind of pass across to them what we have learned, and the revelation of God that they have received, also they run with it. So as leaders, what will you say when it comes to sharing a vision? You have someone set before you, or you see someone that you think is a great potential, and you want to invite the person to join you. How would you present your vision to them? In a nutshell.
How would I present? I would, well, when I see a young people that has a potential, I present, because we have a wide, I'm lucky, we have a very wide range of ministries and school opportunities. So I imagine that person within a certain ministry. And that's what I go for. And I say like, hey, would you pray? I look at you and I see great potential. I see you. I actually do not love to use the word potential, so I never do use it actually. But I say like, I see a great leader in you, and I see you would be really great in the circle of ministry. So I'm very straightforward. I just say, would you pray for the ministry of preschool to join the teacher's circle there and serve with us for a year or two and see if God has a future for you in that ministry.
Okay, that's really great.
I would say the same. I think when we've been involved in recruiting, it's always been about speaking out what we see and how that then fits. I think it's different if you've got people coming to you to say, hey, recruit me. But if we're trying to recruit people that aren't necessarily looking to be recruited into a specific area, it's about calling out the specifics in that person and saying, I see this, I see this, I see this. This is a perfect match for here. Would you, like you say, pray about joining this team? I think you'll be fantastic. I think you'll find fulfillment. I think you'll be a great addition to this team. But it's about marrying up people's skills, giftings, and interests with where the needs are.
It's great, Stuart.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, like encouraging them in what you see in them already. But I would also ask, what is your heart? Where do you feel like, if you have a passion on your heart, what would that look like? And then also just to try to see, like, because it might be, what I see in them might be something totally different than what is actually on their heart. So I'd want to get a feel for that, just to see like if that would fit in, but also just to see, well, hey, why don't you, if you don't know fully yet, like I've ran into some students last year that are so overwhelmed, just, oh, what if I make this wrong decision? Because they think this one decision is going to determine the rest of your life. Like you said, Anya, it's not a marriage, like try it for a year, try it for 2 years. And even that seems a long time when you're 20, but take a step in something that you're passionate about and then try it out. And then there are often aspects of that where, okay, maybe this isn't what I did, but through that, I learned I really love to do this. So yeah, I just we'd like to hear people's hearts and see, I see this in you, but like, can you see yourself in that? Or is there something else that you want? And a third thing might come out of their serving in certain areas. So yeah, I agree with it, the other side, just hearing where they're at and seeing what they have in them, calling it out, and just encouraging them to go with what's on their heart, what God is calling them.
One of the questions that I like to ask is, where do you see yourself in a year? Where do you see yourselves in 5 years? And trying to find things that are going to actually help people succeed in where they're wanting to go. It might be, okay, we'll join our events team, because in doing that and serving our base in that way, you're going to have an understanding of how a YWAM base functions. You're going to have an understanding of event management. You're going to have interactions with people outside of our organization. You're going to need to do paperwork and admin, and it's going to give you all of the skill set that you're going to need so that you can take that and then apply it somewhere else. and being able to make those links so that people don't feel like, oh, I'm serving the base in this area that I don't want to be in. Maybe they don't necessarily see the immediate connection, and you can bridge it with, this is serving you in your desires for your future, because it's going to equip you for what you're wanting to be doing.
It's very key, Jess and Stuart, what you just said, Anya, and what you just said, where do you want to see yourself? So in one hand, we want them to key in to the vision of the base or the ministry, but at the same time, we're keying into them as an individual. So I think that's the one-way traffic. I think about Jesus and his disciples, he calls them. I mean, they had to give their time, their life, and all the things that they valued. So he called them, but then he gave them a promise. He said to them, if you follow me, I will make you fishers of men. In essence, it's like, I give you everything. It's going to cost you, but it's going to benefit you. And I think that's one of the things about vision and vision casting, that as we are sharing the vision, we're sharing it not just because we want to add numbers to the people we're leading, but we're also interested in the individual to see them progress, to see we add value to their life. We also see them grow. And as they grow, we're also willing to let them go. I think that's where the heart comes in, when someone comes and says, it's time. And they're really potential people. And I think that's where we as leaders need to begin to ask the question, are we willing to bless them for the sake of the kingdom and let them go? Maybe not even go out of YWAM, maybe even go to serve another YWAMer or another YWAM base. So I think that's I just want to bring this to a closing. What would the advice be? I will start with you, Anya. If someone approaches you and tells you that my time, I feel I want to go serve somewhere else, as a leader, what would the approach be? Because the vision, they've seen a vision there, and they've been, or not called, they have the word of the Lord to go there. What would you say to that?
Well, I always say, make sure you don't burn your bridges. That's that you leave on good terms, that you can feel that at any time you can come back into this community, whether as a guest or as a partner or in any way. So that my first advice is always, like, make sure you're not doing it because or out of burning bridges, because we've had those cases. I do encourage people to go out in the society. I do believe that YWAM equips into going into spheres, and we do a great job at it. So, but I always say, make sure you don't burn the bridges.
Oh, that's really wonderful. Make sure you don't burn bridges. Yes.
Yeah, we always try to invite them into a discussion and hear a bit more about why this decision is or what. And then we really try to be intentional about doing a good debrief for them. And we talk about expectations, and we talk about, making sure that you are right with everyone in relationship, and that you also, don't burn bridges in that sense. But we do want to bless people. We want to see them fit in where God is calling them to. And we've had a lot of people come into here. Sometimes it's hard because you invest so much in these people. You give of yourself to see them grow. So it's almost like a child, like parenting a child, and like, but really, we want to see them go in the best direction. So we're pretty intentional also about making sure that they wrap up well, and that they have everything done. They don't leave anything undone or unsaid, or and just really know that they are welcome back as well. So pretty much what Anya said.
Stuart?
Yeah, I would agree. I think we hold open-handedly our staff. I don't know if I've got anything more of value to say on that piece, but I think what you have brought up is a very real thing which maybe is worth mentioning, is that we have a very transient staff in YWAM. We can expect that we're going to have staff come and go all the time, which when we're thinking about vision casting and having people take ownership of pre-existing visions, because I think there's the differentiating piece between we're establishing something new, let's get people on board, and then the pre-existing vision that we're trying to invite people into. And for those pieces in particular, where we have this constant turnover of staff, we need to think about what rhythms of vision casting we're putting into our quarters, our years, so that we know, okay, well, we've got this intake, how are we casting the vision for all of the staff or trainees that come through to ensure that that momentum is continued in the midst of this staff turnover. We don't want to lose the ownership of our staff collectively on our shared visions for pre-existing ministries or base direction, those kind of things. We need to be intentional about continuing to repeat those things. For some staff that have been there, 15 years, they might have heard it 100 and something times, and that's not going to hurt them. But for those new staff that are coming through, we want them to capture it. So I think that'll be my closing piece, is with the staff turnover that YWAM faces, we need to think through how we're being intentional about continually communicating the vision.
Well, Stuart, thank you very much. Jesse, thank you very much. And also Anya, thank you very much for this discussion. And it's really key. I mean, I think I love, as we closed it by saying, let's not burn our bridges. Let's keep that relationship flowing, and we have a great time. So thank you very much for this moment, and have a wonderful time and a fantastic February.